Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the Cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Ethereum, and I just wanted to provide yet another outlook on the market. We did this video about a week ago or so, and obviously the price of Ethereum has continued its downtrend. We are slightly higher right now, but I wanted to continue to provide an update and have this basically be a play-by-play. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. One of the things I wanted to say before we jump in here is we're launching two more NFTs for people who like the NFT space. One we're going to be launching on Thursday, the other one on Saturday. And if you hold both of them in in one specific address on May 3rd, then you'll be able to claim a third NFT for free. Okay, so we'll talk more about that later this week, but the first one will be launched on Thursday, the second one on Saturday, and then any of them that have not been bought by the 7th. So the 7th will be the last day to get them. They'll be burned the following day. So make sure you guys stay tuned if you want more information on that. But let's go ahead and jump in here on the Ethereum chart. And one of the things we've noted before is, during impulsive rallies like we had in late 2020 and early 2021, you often see phases where the market gets boring for a while. And your definition of boring and my definition of boring can probably be two completely separate things, because for some people, a move back to $2,600 isn't exactly, it's not a party, right? But they might not characterize it as boring. It might just be awful. It might be another way to think about it. But if you can imagine, longer term investors who scooped up ETH at a couple $100 or so back during the bear market, it's easy to look at this and just say, all right, well, we moved up, we had an impulsive rally, and following this impulsive rally, we've just been going sideways for a while. Whether you consider this sideways or not is obviously up to your own, up to your own interpretation. But for me, this is the definition of sideways. Obviously, it could change, but when we're more or less trading in the same range that we've been in for about at least 2/3 of a year, a little bit longer than 2/3 of a year, I believe, maybe about a year now from these levels. When you're in a range for such a long period of time, you start to, I just call this sideways movement, right? Even though it's brutal, right? It's brutal if the sideways movement is characterized by Ethereum can literally get cut in half, and we're still calling that a sideways movement by Ethereum. And I understand why that is challenging, but you also have to remember that volatility is incredibly normal for an asset class that's also able to yield a 40x in about a year. Okay, so if a 40x is possible in a year, and we then have to consolidate for a while, oftentimes these consolidation phases can last a year in and of themselves. And just to reiterate, so that even if you're sitting in the back of the room and you haven't seen this before, to reiterate, we saw this exact same thing play out, where we basically just went sideways for a year after a fairly long and impressive rally, impulsive rally. This isn't abnormal at all. There's nothing abnormal about this. This is exactly what we saw happen in the past. And one of the things I think to remember is to, we can take this bar pattern from the bottom here and then just sort of take this over and overlay it. Not to say that it has to happen the same way, but just again to remind you of how similar these moves are. And one thing to consider here is that Ethereum, back in this impulsive rally, it was range bound between about $7 and about $16 or so, maybe 14 at the, we had a couple wicks up to $16, but it was mostly between $7 to $14. So the $17 to $14 consolidation, year-long consolidation phase of 2016, the argument, a dubious argument, I understand, there are no guarantees, but the argument is Is it not possible that Ethereum is repeating the same thing, but instead of between $7 to $14, it's just between $2 to $4,000? It's easy for us to look at this chart and call it a sideways action back over here, right? It's really easy of us to do that. We can sit back over here and say, yeah, like it just went sideways. But the pain over here was real as well. Okay, the pain here was real as well. I experienced it. And by the way, when it went down back then, I thought it was going to keep going down. To be completely honest, like I did not expect that move. Like if you had told me when it was trading at $7 that it was about to go to $1,400 over the next year, I would have probably had a few choice words for you. To be completely honest, like it would have just seemed ridiculous. But it did, but it did. And it still had a sideways movement for a year. And again, it's easy for us to sit over here and look at the price without any emotional attachment at the current time and call this sideways movement. But if you call this sideways movement, it sort of elicits a different response because, if you have money invested and you're watching your portfolio drop in half, then to call it sideways is sort of understating what's actually happening. So I just want people to have a little bit of perspective on things. When one of the things we said a year ago is that we should expect a year-long consolidation. Like it is possible for Ethereum to go sideways for a year, and to understand that can easily mean between this fairly large range of 2 to 4K. I think that when you think about it and you try to take the emotions out of it and just say, well, I mean, it technically is very similar to what we saw over here. It just feels different because you have money invested over here, whereas you maybe didn't have money invested over here during an almost identical move, right? An identical move, almost. So to take this rally again and then just sort of overlay it and show you what I mean, this is the impulsive rally. And you can see the similarities. And I'm not going to sit here and say that it has to play out in the exact same way because it doesn't, right? Every cycle will have something different. Every time. There's nothing that's going to be the same about this cycle compared to the last cycle. I'm just showing you that my definition of sideways has not changed, and it's always been this: is that we should be able to stay within this range. And it still is, technically speaking, nothing has actually changed. And one of the interesting things is during that last cycle, we had this move to the top, move to the bottom, another move to the top, and then a move back down, and then another move back to the top, and then another move back down. So qualitatively, there still remains a lot of similarities between what happened with Ethereum back then and what is happening today. Now, I should say, I don't expect Ethereum to pull off a 200x move from this point, even if this does prove to just be long sideways consolidation, because that's what it did last time, right? It went from $7 up to $1,400 in a relatively short period of time. I don't expect that. But what I would expect is, if it is going to play out, what does it mean? Well, it means we have still a grind ahead of us. Whether if it's going to take us until May to get back up to the prior all-time high, which would be, I think at this point a lot of people would very much welcome Ethereum going back to the prior all-time highs by May. If the alternative is to go into a brutal crypto winter, then this seems like a better alternative. And you guys know my thinking on the matter, right? Like I don't think we're headed for a year-long crypto winter. I think we're in a bear market right now, but I don't consider it to be a year-long bear market. I would say that I still think that lengthening cycles will prevail for Bitcoin and by association Ethereum, but there are no guarantees. I'm invested in the market, so I have my expectations, but of course there are no guarantees. And so we'll take this one step at a time. You can see the fractal. It's played out relatively well over the last year. If it's going to continue to play out, then it means we have until potentially May before we're back at the prior all-time high. And if that happens, which there's no guarantees, right? But if it happens, then you will not be able to say that the blueprint wasn't there all along when just simply looking at the prior cycle, right? Like the blueprint has been there all along. An impulsive rally followed by a year-long consolidation, followed by another leg, okay? And I still hope the second leg happens, but I also understand there are no guarantees, and so I don't want to give off the impression that there are any guarantees, right? There's a risk. You either take the risk or you don't, and it's your own decision, right? It's your own decision. So this is the outlook, right? My expectation has always been for a long time that after a long rally by Ethereum, you can easily see long sideways consolidation for a while. By the way, I will remind you, if Ethereum goes back to 3K, it's still sideways consolidation. If it goes down to 2K, it's still sideways consolidation. If it goes up to 4K, it's still sideways, right? The range is more or less between 2 to 4K, right? With Wix, Ethereum saw Wix down to 1,700. Okay? Wix down to 1,700. Over here, there are Wix down to $6 from $7, from maybe $7.50, or Wix down to $6. So the Wix from this one sort of equate to the Wix to $1,700 below the primary accumulation range, or reaccumulation range, I should say. So my outlook on Ethereum has not changed. I've been pretty steadfast for the last 3 years that I think that the market cycle for Bitcoin will lengthen, and that there is simply no reason that we have to constrain the crypto markets to doing something very specific by the end of 2021 just because it did something like that by the end of 2017. I think we need to give crypto the ability to grow, with the idea that we have a lot more people in the space now than we had back then. We have a lot more utility in the space now than we had back then. So, I will continue to think that Ethereum is just in long sideways consolidation, while also recognizing that if that is wrong, then there's always, the downside's always there, right? There's always the downside there, but that's the risk you take. And you either take the risk or you don't. And if you're right, if fast forward a year from now and Ethereum's trading for $10,000 or something, and you're right, don't ever let anyone tell you were lucky, right? Because you took a calculated risk and it paid off. And I guarantee you, if the price goes down, those same people will be there to remind you, that you invested in it, and kind of make snarky comments, right? But if it goes up and the cycle does end up lengthening out, my guess would be the earliest would be the end of the year, but I could easily see it going into 2023. If it does play out, don't let anyone tell you were lucky. You took a calculated risk and it paid off. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. We do have the premium list at intothecryptoverse.com. And remember too, we are launching that NFT on Thursday with another NFT on Saturday. And if you buy both of them and then have them in your wallet on May 3rd, you will be able to claim a third NFT for free. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe if you're not subscribed, and I'll see you next time. Bye.